بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Right, before we go on and talk about this new type of sihr which we discovered recently, this CABAL sihr, let's just briefly remind ourselves of how we discovered Waswas conditioning, which I basically call the fourth spiritual disease, Now, you can find more information about this topic, the Waswas conditioning, from my article, The Waswas from the Possessing Jinn and Qareen, which is on my website, and also in another article titled Ain Portals, Waswas Conditioning, Dead Jinns are Not Bid'ah. You can find more information on Waswas conditioning in those two articles, and also in some of the videos I've talked about it. Okay, so let's go back 10 years ago regarding this issue of Waswas condition, how we came across this thing, this spiritual disease, which is new, I had two patients. They were suffering, and I just didn't know what the problem was, and it took us about 2 years to get to the root of the problem. So they would go back to one of them was particularly would go back to the doctors a number of times, couldn't help him. I would visit him, do the diagnosis on him, check him for sihr, check him for ain, check him for hasad, not get any reactions really, and get no jinn possession. So he's not reacting to the four spiritual diseases that I knew, namely sihr, jinn possession, hasad and ain, not reacting to any of those. So I said, so what can I do? I really can't do nothing. We keep going back to the doctor. You keep going back to the doctor. Doctors can't find anything. So I knew there's a general rule in the Iraqi community that if you get something which is like this, usually, and when the doctors, they cannot find any solution to the problem, it usually points to a spiritual disease. You see. So what I did with that patient is just, okay, I'm just going to read Ruqya on you, brother, but I'm not going to specify any of the known spiritual diseases, because if there is a spiritual disease which we don't know of, you would give me reactions, inshallah ta'ala. I should get reactions from you, because that's what a spiritual disease does. A spiritual disease, according to my definition of it, is a disease which you can't see, meaning it's unseen. It's not physical, meaning you can't touch it, but it reacts to ruqya, and that's how you differentiate it between the physical diseases. Because physical diseases, they do not react to ruqya. They don't give any reactions when you read. So if you read if somebody's got diabetes, for instance, and you read ruqya on them, the ruqya is definitely having an effect if it's treatment. But diagnosis, it won't work. There'll be no reactions when you try to read ruqya on somebody with diabetes. You're not going to get any reactions. So I decided to read on this brother. We read the ruqya. And subhanallah wa bihamdi, we started getting reactions. Now, to cut a long story short, then we sort of worked out that this thing he was suffering from was from a possessing jinn, and I think we also worked out it was from the qareen as well, which left something behind. And then the other patient, long-term patient, had something problems. They reacted to the same thing as well. And the funny thing is, I also reacted to it as well, and I didn't even know this thing existed. Now, I had a problem. Where I had an issue where I would get reminded, even from the shaitan, from the qareen, about embarrassing situations that I had in the past. So that embarrassing situation will I'll see an image, of that embarrassing situation which I was in, and then I would get a feeling. There'll be a lot of emotions and feelings towards that embarrassment, and it would just bring the memories back, you see. And it got to a point where I would actually start making, there'll be some, I'll make some noises actually when I would remember that incident. When the shaitan would remind me of the incident, it would be difficult to handle, you see. And I actually remember sitting down. I think I was driving in Qatar once, and I had one of those bad recollections, and it affected me really bad. And I thought, wow, Said, I think this illness, probably I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. And there's nothing I can do about it, and it's just really difficult to deal with. And subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allah cured me. When I realized this brother was suffering from this, I checked myself. And alhamdulillah, I reacted. When I got rid of that, I didn't have that problem again. I just didn't have that problem again, So, I had I did the ruqya, reacted, did the treatment, alhamdulillah, got cured from it. And now, if the shaitan tries to remind me of things, and those sometimes those same incidents, the images might be there in my mind, or I'll get reminded, but there's no associated feelings with it. Alhamdulillah, it went away. And so it's a reality. Yes, there's nothing really in the sunnah about this disease, but it's a reality. You see, it's a reality. The waswas condition exists, you know. And if you ever suffer from jinn possession, that's one thing that you have to make sure that you get rid of. After the jinn has left you, it would have left some rubbish behind. Basically, psychologically conditioned you, and that rubbish, that is what we call basically the waswas condition. You have to remove that. You know, if you don't remove that, then you're going to still feel like you're possessed, you see. So, yeah, it's definitely it's a disease. Maybe it's not in the Quran and Sunnah, but that doesn't really matter if it's not in the Quran and Sunnah. It's a reality, and we've experienced this. Like some other diseases, the jinn, which the love jinn, the ashik jinni, which people have suffered from, it's not in the Quran or the Sunnah, but it's there. We know that people suffer from these things, you see. You know? Yeah, and the Sharia, you have to remember here, has not really defined or told us that you can only have this set number of spiritual diseases and no more. You cannot add anything to that. Really, the Sharia doesn't make actually any doesn't differentiate between a physical disease or a spiritual disease. They're the same. There's no special rules for spiritual diseases. The disease is the disease, you know, and you've got to deal with them. You've got to diagnose them and try and treat them, you see. So nobody can come along and say it's bid'ah. Oh my God, waswas condition is a bid'ah. You can't be talking about that. Well, it's a disease. How can a disease be bid'ah? We don't worship Allah with the disease. This is not a bid'ah, you see. Yes, if you want to say it's something new, yes, it's something new, but it itself is not an act of worship. We don't worship Allah with waswas conditioning, you see. Yeah, so it's possible to have new diseases, new spiritual diseases. There's no doubt about that. You know, just like we can have new physical diseases. So we can have new diseases, no doubt about that. Now, from my experience of dealing with that waswas conditioning, I wrote some kind of advice on discovering new spiritual diseases, which I'm going to read from briefly. Might not read all of it, but I'll read some of the main parts to this from my article 7 Rules for Specific Ruqya. And it's point 35, NB 35, right near the end of the article. It's titled Some Advice on Discovering New Spiritual Diseases. And I start and I say, in general, we don't discuss the unseen if there is no need to. Exactly, that's correct. If there's no need to talk about the unseen world of the jinn, angels or whatever, we do not talk about it. In our context, it's to do with the jinn and the spiritual diseases. If there's no need to talk about it, we don't talk about it. You see, you know, we keep quiet about it and only talk about it. And only talk about the unseen when we can see a clear and direct benefit for the Muslims. Just like our case with the waswas conditioning. So don't go searching for a new spiritual disease if there is no need to. We don't go looking for spiritual diseases, new spiritual diseases. Allah will guide us to them. We don't need to go looking for them. Just like the case of this waswas conditioning, and also this case of CABAL, Sihr, which I will talk about, inshallah ta'ala. So Allah will guide you to them, like my example of how I discovered the waswas conditioning. So this advice that I present here is coming from my own experience. Okay, my own experience of dealing with the waswas conditioning. Yeah, we have seen people get misguided because of these things, and they end up doing strange things with a specific Ruqya diagnosis, and that's what they do. This whole article is about that. Well, I've seen people doing strange things with it. And sadly, I'm still having problems with people because they're not really reading this article and they're still making mistakes with Ruqya Diagnosis. You see, sadly. I had recently somebody who's saying to me that, he was coming across quite a lot of new spiritual diseases. And I was thinking, I don't think so, you know. I don't think so, you know. I could be totally wrong. Maybe that brother is right. But I doubt that there was the amount he was telling me that they were. I don't think they were, you know. Anyway, let's go on to, but that was just a disagreement we had. The brother might be totally correct, but I doubt it. I doubt it, you know. So we have seen people get misguided because of these things, and they end up doing strange things with the specific Ruqya diagnosis. There has to be a real need. Yeah, that's what it has to be, a real need. Don't just go looking for a new spiritual disease. Have you looked at the other ones, you know? We just don't go searching for a new spiritual disease. So if a patient says, it is beneficial to know if I have a new spiritual disease, and so I want to read Ruqya Diagnosis with the intention, oh Allah, show me if I have a new spiritual disease, then we would say that there is no need to do this, no need to do this this particular diagnosis right now, because you are not suffering from an unexplained medical problem, and you may already have one of the 4 spiritual diseases that is causing your problems. You shouldn't jump the gun and presume or assume that you are negative for sihr, ain, jinn possession, or waswas conditioning. Yes, so we don't go around thinking straight away that I'm going to look for a spiritual disease. Ruqya is beneficial. Yeah, it's beneficial in certain situations, in certain contexts. Not after, have you looked at the other diseases first of all before you decide to look for a new spiritual disease, you see. And what we've seen from this, and I'm just going from my example of the waswas conditioning and this new CABAL sihr that we recently dealt with, Allah will guide you to it. Allah will guide you to it. You don't even have to worry about it. You know, so if there is a new spiritual disease there and it's affecting the Muslims, Allah will guide us to it. Okay, we shouldn't treat specific Ruqya diagnosis like an experiment or a game. That's very important. As I have said above in NB23. So there's a point where I talk about don't use Ruqya like an experiment or game. It's not. It's a serious act of worship. Don't play around with it. More information on that if you go back in the article. Remember, this is point 35 we're looking at here. You go back in the article NB23. If you go there, you will see where I talk about the point of not using Ruqya like an experiment or game. We should only use it when we really need it. And I have seen people being misguided by the shaitan because they delved into unnecessary diagnosis, and then they end up denying Ruqya diagnosis altogether, and then they could possibly deny spiritual disease altogether, and that can happen. So they get some reactions, and the next thing you know, they get all confused and what's happening next. Oh, forget it. It's all wrong. There's no such thing as jinn possession, and there's no such thing as sihr. There's no such thing as ain. And they don't believe in it, especially with the jinn possession. They won't believe in jinn possession. Okay. In general, as with all Islamic issues, it is better to leave an issue of new spiritual diseases with the scholars and raqis. If you're having problems with it, you don't have much experience, so just leave it to the scholars and the raqis who are in this field. Okay, let's just look about some points I've mentioned here about discovering new spiritual diseases. I won't read them all, I don't think, but there's a few which I think are important. Discovering new spiritual disease, some important conditions before accepting a discovery. Okay, the following is a list of conditions that should be understood or be present before conclusions about a new spiritual disease can be accepted from anyone. Okay, so if somebody claims that he's got a new spiritual disease, well, we have to be careful. We can't just immediately accept it. The person must have the understanding that the Sharia has not fixed the number of spiritual diseases, so therefore we can discover new ones. That's possible. As I said earlier, that's possible. Understanding the definition of a spiritual diseases and how to differentiate them from physical diseases. And we used Ruqya really to differentiate between the two. Some people still don't understand that point, sadly, and that's why they have an issue with Ruqya diagnosis. So you find that they don't know when they're cured from sihr. So in fact, the way they will know that they're cured from sihr and jinn possession would be, they would just say, well, if you feel good for the next 6 months to a year, 3 months or whatever, if you're feeling good, then you're good to go. You're all right. It's gone. Meaning they've treated the spiritual disease, sihr there, just like they treat physical diseases. Physical disease. So you diagnose and you know that you're cured from a physical disease by that. When the problem disappears and you don't have any problems from it for a year or whatever, 6 months, you feel better. No more pain. No more issues with that problem you were complaining about. Then the issue has gone. But that is not the case with spiritual diseases. Because we can't see them, you have to read Ruqya to know if they've gone. Okay. Understanding the use of specific Ruqya diagnosis to discover new spiritual disease, and that no other way must be used as Ruqya diagnosis is the only definitive way to discover a new spiritual disease. That's very important. That's the only way you're going to work out if you've got something like that. Like the way I manipulated intention to make sure I wasn't hit when I was reading on that brother. I made sure I wasn't reading on sihr, ain, hasad, jinn possession. I made sure I'm not reading on that. I'm asking Allah now, is there anything else there, Ya Rabbi? And I was reading on that spiritual disease which was there, X, whatever. I didn't know what it was at the time, And then we got our reactions. So you got to be able to know how to do that. You see, if you're one of those Raqis who just read Ruqya on somebody and then, really don't know what you're doing in terms of you don't break down the intentions and, focus on something first of all before focusing on anything else, then that is a problem. You won't be able to work this out. You won't be able to work out if the person's got a new spiritual disease or not. Understanding that if the medical doctors can't explain the phenomenon or problem that a patient is complaining about, then the problem is usually caused by a spiritual disease, be it new or old. However, this condition is not essential. So if there is a problem there and the doctors can't understand it, usually that means there is something maybe there. And like I gave an example of what we did with the Waswas conditioning. There are other points here which I think are important to look at, and if people have got time, please have a look at them, inshallah ta'ala. I think they're really important points to look at. But let's just go back to my case here of what we were dealing with these two cases I was dealing with here. And again, there were two cases, subhanAllah, with this what we call now CABAL Sihr, and that's the name I gave it. I might change the name, but I mean, I think the name was appropriate, really, you see. So I was dealing with two cases, and with these two cases, they were doing the Ruqya which I recently taught, about the King Jinni, finding out if you're connected to King Jinni and get rid of the whole network, including the King Jinni and what's even above it. Get rid of it all. And they were doing that. And they were wiping out all the King Jinns. All gone, alhamdulillah, it's working out. But after a few days, another one. And sometimes it got to a point where it was even after a few hours, they're getting a new one. And one point, I think one of the brothers said to me, he got 3 or 5 in one day, new networks. And I was saying to myself, I said to the brother later on, this guy must be doing something really bad in order to get this kind of help from Iblis. May Allah curse him, because it's too much. I think this is a serious Sahir. I remember the brother telling me also that this Sahir, he went to Umrah. There was some sort of suggestion that, maybe this guy's going to go and make Tawbah now. He's realized it's all messed up, No, I think what he went there for was to do more kufr and shirk over there, to do more evil sins and get close to Iblis. Instead of getting close to Allah, he's going to Umrah to get close to Iblis. May Allah curse him, So we were just having new networks, and it was a problem for me. With this case was a serious problem. Both of them were, in fact, So it got me. We had just asked Allah for guidance. You see, going round in circles, we were really having a problem. He was getting rid of. Alhamdulillah, the brother was competent. The Ruqya was working well. Within a few minutes, he would get rid of all the networks, and all of the King Jinn will die. Even some of them were very quite elaborate networks. You see, they all connect up with each other, and that's what they do. It's kind of what you could say. It's like in layers. You see, they got one group of sahids, the main sahid is connected. It just goes on sometimes. But alhamdulillah, the brother will read on all of the networks and get rid of it all, alhamdulillah. You see. And then when one, it's just qadar Allah helped us with one time when he did the diagnosis on him, said, I got new sihr. And I said, he just wanted to read Ruqya. And I said, wait. And he did a diagnosis where he asked Allah to show him if he's connected to anything else. Meaning his body. If there's something in his body which is connected to something else. And because he left it a bit open like that, he got a reaction. I said, okay. I said, you know what? I'm connected to something else, I said, good. There's something else here. Okay. And then I was thinking, because I was dealt with another case where I thought he was Ain. Maybe he's got an Ain network which the jinn are using and the sahid is using to give the sihr, put the sihr on the brother. Because we had a case where they're using Ain and Hasad, and they're using that to give networks to give sihr to the brother. So I said to him, okay, it's probably an Ain network. Check if it's Ain network. No reactions. It's not Ain? I said, wow, okay. It's Hasad then. Check for Hasad. Read with that intention, Hasad. Reads, no reaction. It's funny. Go back. Have you got something? Is there something there? Is there a connection there? Go back to what you just, the first diagnosis. Am I connected? He said, I'm connected to something. I said, okay, something is there, but it's not Ain and it's not Hasad. Okay, is it Sihr? Check is it Sihr, but then he was, I think maybe he could have been reluctant with that one because we already checked if he was connected to Sihr. That was something else. This can't be another Sihr network. Then he would have come up with the other one when we were looking for the other one. But the original, the latest sort of sihr, we diagnosed that because we did this diagnosis after he realized he had new sihr and there's a new network and whatever. But there's something else. You see, this is the unthinking. So how would we miss that then? We would have got a reaction for 2 sihr networks then, but we didn't. So this is something different. Okay, okay, but let's just read. Do it again. See if that thing is sihr. Maybe we made a mistake. Go on, read. Maybe we didn't look at the reactions. He reads. No reaction. So this connection coming out of the body of the brother is not sihr. It's not a sihr network. It's not a sihr connection. I said, what's going on here? Okay, then I asked him, okay, what's your definition of sihr? He said, my definition of sihr is the contract and this. I said, leave that one alone. Don't use that. Don't use that something about the contract. It's a contract. Use the definition of the sihr which is mentioned in the Quran. It's quite clear. You're going to be confused about that definition. Is it the sihr of the Quran which this connection is? Is this what this is? He reads with that intention. No reactions. I said, hey, what's going on here? You know? So it's not ayn. It's not hasad. It's not sihr as we know it from the Quran. Okay? Then I said to read, with the intention, is this a spiritual disease, unknown spiritual disease, Ya Rabbi? Meaning unknown to us, we don't know about it. Maybe other Iraqis, they know about it and they're quite familiar with it. I don't know what they call it. It could be like that. But unknown here meaning to us, me and the patient. He reads and he starts reacting. I said, what is this? Okay. Then he said, Subhanallah. See, there's something new here. So I said, okay, yeah, it's definitely something new. Yeah, for us it's new. It could be other Iraqis, they might know about it, but for us, we don't know about it. This is new. This is a new spiritual disease, new connection. Then we did diagnosis. Is that thing inside your body? This because if you've got a connection coming out, I said by default then, if you've got something coming out of your body, that thing is inside your body as well, just like sihr. When you got sihr and there's something, a network, then by default you've got sihr in your body. So if you've got a sihr, if you react to a sihr network, there's definitely sihr in your body then. Okay, or you won't have this network coming out of you. So I said, okay, you've got this new spiritual disease inside you then, brother. Check for that, please. He reads, if I got the new spiritual disease inside me, basically, and he's got it. He's reacting. I said, there you go. So you got that thing inside you. It's coming out and it's connecting to something. All right, so where's this thing in your body? He finds this on his calf muscle. Okay, there you go. Or I think maybe he did that in the next day. Then we worked out, okay, where's this thing connected to? What's happening to? Where is it going? Is it going to the Sahir who did it? It's not going to the Sahir. Okay, where is it going? It just connects up to Jinn. Okay, have Jinn done this? Reacts to that. I think he reacted to that. Is Jinn doing all of this? So it's Jinn. So I was thinking, okay, maybe it's the Jinn doing something special on him. Okay, I said, no, that guy is nasty. And I went back and remember that guy is a nasty devil, that one. Okay. So let me go back. Let me go back. And I said, is he involved basically? Did he tell the Jinn basically to do this thing to you? And he reacted to that. So I said, okay, there you go. Right. So subhanallah wa bihamdi. So he reacted to that. So we knew now that this guy, the Sahir who's been dealing with, who's been sending all this conventional, what we should call conventional sihr, is from him, this disease, this disease, you see, So what I'll read out to you now is, this is basically what we got from our diagnosis about this thing, So from the diagnosis of this CABAL sihr, which I might change the name, but for me the name's now it seems appropriate, is a completely new spiritual disease with a different energy force than conventional sihr, and that's why it goes undetected, and that's why it's dangerous. So the reason why we did a diagnosis on this brother was this to facilitate him getting the other sihr, and that's what it was. So we will knock out the other sihr, but we will know that this is there because it's not going to react to sihr ruqya or diagnosis, because we didn't even know it was there. And it was the only fact that the brother said, is that I'm connected to anything else? And that's why we got the reaction. So what it was the Sahir was doing was he set this network up, and I think they know that we're not going to detect this thing. And they used that to send more sihr. That's what they were doing basically, you see. So they used this CABAL sihr to send conventional sihr, which is mentioned in the Quran. Okay. From the diagnosis, we found that just going back to that first point again, it's a completely new force, and that's why it doesn't react to ruqya. It's completely different from conventional sihr, which is mentioned in the Quran. It's different. It's different. So that's why it doesn't react. We don't get reaction for it when we look for a conventional sihr. It doesn't react because it's different. You see. Yes, there is a contract. We will talk about that, but it's not. And that's why you can call it some sort of sihr. And that's why I call it CABAL sihr, because it's some sort of contract already between the sahir and the jinn. That's why they do it, because obviously he must have done some kufr and shirk for them in order for them to do it for him. You see, okay. So there is a contract, and that's why I still call it sihr in that sense. Sihr in the sense here now, just because of the contract. Okay, it doesn't use ta'weed or master jinn in this network. So for the first diagnose, other patients might have something different, but what we did with this particular patient, there's no ta'weed and there's no master jinni involved. No ta'weed or no master jinni involved. Okay? It shares similarities with conventional sihr in terms of treatment. So we reacted to that. So because we wanted to know how we're going to treat this thing. Is it similar to that? Ya Rabbi? And he reacted to that. So it's similar to conventional sihr in terms of treatment. The human sahir is not personally involved in CABAL sihr network. So sometimes the human sahir is involved in it, in the network. You find that he's got the master jinni in him or has the king jinni in him, but in this one he's not. He's just outside of it. The jinn are involved completely. It's all to do with the jinn. He doesn't have anything really. He's not inside the network himself. It can collect in a human body in a particular area, just like conventional sihr, and so we can use jet hijama treatment to remove it. So as the brother, it collected all up in the calf muscle. So you can treat it basically, use the jet hijama treatment, just like you use with conventional sihr. So the CABAL sihr, the network system, is similar to the conventional sihr. The only difference is that the sahir is not going to be involved with him. The sahir is not involved in it, but it's all connected. The CABAL sihr is all connected just to jinn. That's what's in the network. It's all to do with jinn. The CABAL sihr can be used to afflict the conventional sihr on the victim. So in this particular case, for this patient, they used the CABAL sihr so that they can keep giving sihr to the brother. So if you find that you've got patients who just keep getting sihr, then the shayateen, these people might be, and the sahir, they might be using this kind of undetectable sort of CABAL sihr to put you conventional sihr onto the victim. So you have to look for that. You see. CABAL sihr can have its own possessing jinn in the victim. It can have its own possessing jinn. Just like you have your own possessing jinn from sihr, you can have your own possessing jinn from CABAL sihr. The possessing jinn from CABAL sihr can cause waswas conditioning, just like the normal sihr. So the jinn from CABAL sihr, they can give you waswas conditioning. CABAL sihr can do similar things that conventional sihr is used for, e.g. divorce, infertility, murder, loss of wealth. They can do the same sort of stuff it can do. That's what we learned from this experience. They can do the same thing. The CABAL sahir asks the jinn to do this CABAL sihr, i.e. verbal contract, in a similar way to conventional sihr does, in a similar way that the conventional sahir does conventional sihr. So obviously, it's the same sort of, like it was a verbal contract. Some sort of contract happens there. Okay, so that's how we know that he requested it to be done, and then from obviously once we knew it was requested from him, we knew that the jinn are not going to do anything unless you do some of your kufr and shirk. So we knew that he was involved. So there is a contract. It might not be written in a ta'weed form or whatever, but there is a contract. He does his kufr and shirk for them, and then they do the thing for him. You see? But in order to get this kind of CABAL sihr done, you're going to have to do some serious kufr and shirk for them. Really. Some really awful stuff you have to do. And I think that this person probably does that. And that's one of the reasons when he goes on his umrah trip is just used to get close to Iblis. Allah curse him. So it's the average sahir is not going to be getting this, will have this stuff. This is just going to be for what we call the elite. Although I don't like using that term, it's just one of those very experienced sahir. They will have the access to doing this kind of sihr on people. For diagnosis, for this, what you can use Surah Falaq. Because it is a contract still, it is some sort of sihr, but it's not the conventional sihr. So you will react to it if you use Ayah 4 Surah Falaq. So you can do that. Because there are some similarities, like we said, with the conventional sihr. So you can use that ayah and keep repeating it, and you'll get the same sort of reactions as you would for conventional sihr. Okay. Yeah, and just the last point, just to reiterate that point, that this thing seems to be done by the sahir who's got to a certain level in his kufr and shirk and his worship of the jinn. Then they would allow him to do, they would do this for him. You see, that's what we have so far on this sihr, which I call CABAL sihr. You know, so if you're one of those patients who are suffering, and you finding that it keeps, and then you are dealing with the king jinn, and you keep removing it, yet you still keep getting sihr. Okay. After even removing the networks, you still find that you still got sihr. Then you need to check for this. You need to check for this CABAL sihr. You see. Now, when you do that, I mean, it's possible. I mean, if you've listened to this and you have some sort of understanding of what I'm talking about, then you could just ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to see if you've got this CABAL sihr, which side was talking about. You can, that can be put in your diagnosis, no problem. If you get confused, I don't know how to define it, I don't know what to say to Allah, what am I going to say? Well, just say, have I got this CABAL sihr that Sa'id was talking about, basically, to Allah? And you read with that intention. If you get reaction, you got it then, basically. And that's what I did with a patient, the other patient, because he got a bit confused, didn't know how to define it, didn't understand it. So I just said to him, look, all you should do, ask Allah to show if you've got the thing that Sa'id recently discovered, and see what you get. And he did that diagnosis and he started reacting. He was a bit shocked. And I said, you know what, I'm not really surprised, because your case is similar to this case I'm dealing with, really. You see. Okay, that's all I want to say about this. Inshallah ta'ala, if we have any updates, I would try and inshallah bring them to you as soon as possible, inshallah ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.